right. So I guess first off, thank you for being here and taking the time to sit down and have a little chat with me. I guess we should start off by telling or giving everyone a little bit of your background and kind of tell them what a vitality coach is, and then we can kind of get things going from there. How about that?
That sounds great.
Okay.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here with you. So a vitality coach is somebody that helps you to thrive, to live, move, and feel your best from the inside out. So I am both a personal trainer and I teach yoga, and I help people with mental fitness, which is the inner game of quieting the noisy chatter in your head so that you can not only feel incredible, but be able to think on purpose to bring your big vision and your mission to life.
Nice. So what got you started down this journey, I guess? Have you always been, wanting to promote positive thinking, positive mental fitness, as you just said? And have you always had a fitness background? That's why you went down the personal training background or part of it. So where do we start? How did it happen?
Well, it happened after I graduated from university. I studied gerontology. So gerontology is the study of aging. So when I graduated, I realized, you know what? I don't think I'm cut out for this. I'm too sensitive. I'm too empathetic. I can't go work in a retirement home. So instead, I decided to move to Hawaii and become a personal trainer, much to my parents' confusion. But they were supportive because it's kind of a preventative approach to aging, helping you to feel good and enhance the quality of your life. So it made sense for me to become a trainer. I've always loved dance as a little girl. I loved to exercise and to run. And so it was something that I enjoyed. And so I figured, well, why wouldn't I try to help other people enjoy it too?
So gerontology, I mean, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but I'm kind of interested because you're the first person I've actually heard majored or studied this. So it's actually the study of growing old, basically, or how the body grows old. Is that what it is? The gist of it?
Essentially, yes. How we grow old, but also what that means biologically, of course, but then also from a sociological perspective and a psychological perspective and a cultural perspective. So looking at the different ways that some cultures help to keep their older generations inside their home, inside their family unit. They make them part of the family. Other cultures kind of, ooh, that was my doggy. Sorry. Other cultures kind of, treat that older generation in a much different way. But ultimately, the study is how can you thrive? How can you feel good? How can you make the most of the days that you have and bring the most life into the years that you have?
Do you know who, I guess the reason I ask this is because, do you know who David Sinclair is?
No.
Okay, so I think he was a Harvard professor, still is, but his whole research or whatever you want to say is basically studying age and aging. And I think he actually was talking about how aging's never really called a disease because it ends, I guess. I hope I got that right. Might be, but anyway, now he's saying like how he's developing CRISPR technology, which is basically replacing DNA. So it kind of reverses aging. And also that, if you have certain traits that you wish you have, but it's not in your DNA sequence, he would replicate that using just like a regular computer and making the body have that trait. Now, is there side effects? Probably. There are a lot of, would I be a first adopter of this technology? Probably not. I'd like to see what's going on. But I guess it's kind of, as we get, older, I was just like, how can I still thrive? How can I still be moving when I get, 80 years old? Just because, I know we're going to talk about posture and stuff a little bit, but you just see people walking down the street and stuff. And it's like, hey, what's going on, man? Like, why are you so hunched over? Like what happened? And yeah, it's just, I've always had it in my mind that when I get that older, if I get that old, I just never wanted to be like that. Does that kind of make sense what I'm saying?
Oh, 100%. That totally makes sense, because when we look at older generations, older people, it kind of looks a little scary, right? Because we look at it and we think, is that what's going to happen to me too? Because that seems to be what's happening to a whole lot of people. Sure. And the great answer is that it's not your destiny. It's not the natural decline of the human body. I mean, always we're going to be working against gravity. We don't have any choice in the matter on that. But we do have the choice in how you handle gravity based on what you do today. And how somebody looks in their later years is based on the choices that they've made throughout their earlier years. And so the more ahead of the curve, quite literally, you can get, then the stronger you feel today, the more energized you feel today. But then the better you sleep tonight, the more energized you wake up tomorrow, the more likely it is you're going to do something that day. And so you can see how it creates that sort of momentous ripple effect in your life. And really, it comes down to what are you doing to make sure that you don't go into that hunchback on a daily basis. And here's the thing is, we're both sitting down right now.
Yeah.
Many of your listeners might be sitting down while they're listening to it. One thing that we all do way too much of is sitting, and that can definitely take a toll and impact how the later years turn out.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Based on history and I guess genetics and just whatever, everything I've read, that, the human body was designed to move, obviously. If you go back to primitive times and primal, whatever, just, that's how, people got their food and stuff. It was based on, who's running, who's getting the food, who's hunting and all that good stuff. So sitting all day is not how we were designed, and people don't really, I feel like people don't understand that anymore. I feel like they do and they don't, they're just like, oh, it's only a few hours, It's like, well, it's probably more than a few hours than what it really is. And then they don't realize, just how the body is just, we're pretty adaptable, and the body's adapting to that situation. It's like, hey, the body's not made. I guess that's my whole point. It's not made to sit for 8 hours plus a day, and there's ways around it. I mean, do you advise like certain ways, like, even right now I'm sitting here thinking about my posture, not so, and that's just because, even with, my, I do a little CrossFit and stuff on the side, but even like the whole thing, it's like, it's always straight back, bring your chest together or bring your chest apart, pull your shoulders together and stuff. And that's how you got to always be, and is that kind of what, you've been trying to preach and coach, I guess?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Coach. Yes, I definitely tend to have that effect on people. And, when we start talking about posture, everybody kind of goes, woo, and gets a whole lot taller. But to go back to your point about the human body is we're not designed to move. And what we're seeing because of all of the sitting we do, typically anywhere between 8 to 12 hours, people sit down, and typically anywhere between 8 to 12 hours, people are on some sort of device, whether that's a car, a computer, a phone, a tablet, causing even more of that rounded, weak posture. And so when we sit some more, we're starting to see what postural experts, myself included, are calling what is scarily called a postural D evolution. So we went from being able to kind of walk on all fours. We started to evolve our ability to be upright using more tools. And now the number one tool we all use is one of these, a phone, a computer, and it's pulling us into that rounded, primitive posture. And we're seeing that really early on now. We're seeing stuff that we associated with elderly people, kind of that rounded hunch in the back. We're starting to see that in children under the age of 10. And that's really alarming, and that's scary, right?
Yeah, I mean, I notice that a lot, when I'm walking out and about and this stuff, people are just, looking down the whole time and whatever, when I'm walking or driving through the area or town here, that I've almost hit people just because they're not looking up. And I was like, that's gotta be so bad. And I even catch myself doing it. I mean, I'm, totally to blame for it too, but I try to always like, oh shit, you're doing it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And even just sitting here, well, and I even got a stand-up desk just for that purpose, just, a few years ago. Because I had a job that I was very active in. I was always up walking around and stuff, but then went to a regular computer job. It's like, I can't do this. I got to be having some kind of stand-up desk. We even have a lot of people where I work at with stand-up desks, but they don't use just because, they don't care, I guess. But, and also I wanted to bring up that you just feel good if you walk and you're standing up straight and you're walking, and it's like a sign of confidence almost, that, you're not sitting here like you can't breathe and you got your shoulders and it looks very defensive. And, when you're upright, you're showing that you're open to the world, I guess,
100%. Yeah. There's so many layers to that for sure. And so firstly, we shouldn't be looking at our phones when we're walking in the road. That's totally a pet peeve of mine. Like, why are people on the phone when they're in the parking lot or when they're crossing at a crosswalk? I'm like, hello, is your text more important than getting across the street safely? I'll just leave that there. To your second point is when we hold our phone, we tend to hold it down low. So here's a little tip for yourself and for your listeners is to lift it up. So bring it up to eye level if you can. At first it feels funny. People are like, what am I, like 80? I got to hold it up in front of my face now. So just hold it up a little higher is better, because then it doesn't pull you into that rounded position. And because what happens is when we go into that texting position, your head is typically about 6 inches forward of your shoulders. And your head, when it's on top of your shoulders, is on average between 8 and 12 pounds. For easy math, let's just say your head is 10 pounds. So it's 10 pounds when it's right on top of your shoulders. When you move it 1 inch forward, it doubles in weight. So now it's 20 pounds. And then you move it another inch and now it's 40 pounds. And it keeps getting heavier and heavier. And so if the average position is 6 inches forward, you can just bet that that's really darn heavy. And that's why the neck and shoulders are hurting so bad. Yeah. So one of the things that you pointed to was the appearance of somebody's posture and the way that they're carrying themselves. And you're so right in saying it's a confidence thing. It's an upright, it's an approachable, it's an open sort of posture because you're literally nice and wide across the chest. So you're kind of walking with your chest open or your heart open, if you will, depending on, what direction you go with that. And really what it's doing is communicating incredible things through your body language. 60 to 70% of our communication comes through your body language. Sure. So people, whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not, are reading you based on the way that you're carrying yourself. And not only are they reading you, but your brain is also reading you because your brain and body obviously very interconnected. So your heart and your brain are very, very interconnected. Your heart sends more information up to your brain by way of your nervous pathways than your brain sends down to your heart. So your heart is constantly sending signals back up to your brain. So if you are sitting in that slumped over weak posture, which, most people, if you ask them like, what does somebody who's sad look like? How would they carry themselves? Well, you can guarantee it's that like slumped over, crossed arms, closed off position. If we're sitting in that posture, your heart's like, I'm not really sure what's happening, but we're breathing like we're super stressed out. We're holding ourselves like we're super sad and stressed out. So it's like, well, let's just send that message up to the brain. And the brain says, oh, okay, I guess that's what happens. We're stressed out. So more cortisol, less oxytocin, less dopamine. We're just kind of shutting down. And so that's called embodied physiology. So the quickest way to change your state is to change the way you're holding your body. So Tony Robbins talks a lot about that. Other people like to talk about it because it's so impactful. So when you change your posture, when you lift yourself back up into that like open, confident, gonna walk in the room, owning it, you got it, owning it sort of posture, it not only changes how people are perceiving you, but also how you are perceiving yourself.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I feel like that every day, just like, oh, I got to open. Even when I don't catch myself doing it, it's like, nope, no matter how bad you're feeling, dude, get up and start walking, get those shoulders back. But I guess to play devil's advocate here, just some people will, say, well, no, I can't do that. I'm not you. I can't walk like that. It's like, well, yeah, you can do it, and I'm a firm believer in, you can do it. You just got to get the confidence up a little bit, and I'm a firm believer in competence builds confidence. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think?
100%. I agree with you. And a lot of times when we try something new, it feels a little bit uncomfortable. And when we start to try something new and to stretch yourself and go to the edge of your zone of familiarity is when the noisy chatter, the collective in your mind, that monkey, like negative committee in your head starts to say like, oh, no, we're not going to do that. Why are you doing that? That's stupid. What are you going to do? And it's because it wants to keep you safe. It doesn't want you going out there and looking sassy and like putting yourself out there and being confident. It wants you to stay safe and it wants you to stay in that constricted and tight position. So when you are opening yourself up and you're really moving back into that, you feel different, right? And so confidence isn't something that we just like get bopped on the head and we're all of a sudden confident. It's like anything. When you practice it, you start to get a little momentum with it. And so when I put people into a stronger posture, not a good posture, bad posture, it's weak posture, strong posture. When you're in strong posture, it feels strange at first because you've probably spent 25 plus years, sometimes way more, not in that posture, right? And it becomes a little more familiar every time you practice it. Just like anytime you challenge yourself, whatever that is for you, you go live on Facebook, you send a post, whatever it is, you challenge yourself and it gets a little bit easier every time. So every time you move into strong posture, you feel like, okay, yeah, this doesn't feel as weird as last time. It feels kind of good. All right, I feel energized. And then you'll start to notice when you're not in that and you're like, whoa, look at me slumping over again. Up I go. And so coming back to that. So it's definitely a dance for sure. It becomes more comfortable with time.
And I just want to circle back just to say, I wanted to make sure I was clear that when walking with your, upright and your shoulders back, I'm not talking like saying like you're a bodybuilder and can't fit through a door or whatever. Yeah. I just want to make sure others knew that, just that, and not be overly cocky, and
right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I guess there's a difference between arrogance and confidence, of course, but yeah, I just want to make sure that I didn't sound like an idiot saying that or a dickhead.
No, you didn't. You didn't. And that is a very good point, because sometimes when we're trying to do something new, we tend to like way overcorrect and be like, oh, well, she said, shoulders back and chest up, and he said chest open and this and that. And so we tend to go way to the opposite extreme. So just try a little bit with it. Just see if you can even practice walking taller, or sitting taller, and see how that feels. Your body will kind of get the signals. And like you said, it's not an arrogance thing. It's not like you're, strutting in there trying to take over the world, but it's just noticing. I think it's an awareness thing. It's really coming back to being aware of how you're moving and how you're showing up.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And, when you're working with people with bad posture and trying to get better, I mean, let's say I think you said somebody's been sitting wrong or hunched for 10 to 20 years. How long do you start to see improvements? I mean, would it take after just exercises or whatever you're doing for a week? You see results in a month, or is it just little by little? I mean, how long do you think here? Do you actually start seeing results, I guess is my question.
Well, people start to feel the results in one session. You can start to feel the difference in a few deep breaths. It changes your nervous system. It changes your biochemistry. You can feel different pretty much right away. But when it comes to the structural changes, it does take a little bit of time, and it takes consistency, which is where a lot of people kind of fall down and get tripped up on things, right? Of getting into a routine with something. So being consistent. And so that's one thing where people, they think, oh, I got to do like an hour every day or whatever to make it worthwhile. And it's all cumulative. So a little bit every day adds up. And if you are consistent, even in just a few days, you'll start to feel the way that you're carrying yourself is different. And I find something very helpful for people is I do an alignment analysis at the beginning of our sessions when we start working together, and I run it through a posture app. And when they see themselves,
oh yeah,
it's one of those like, oh boy, help.
I can't remember which class, but back in my bachelor's degree, we actually you might have to do this too. They put you in front of a grid. Our professor did, and he would see like, if one shoulder is kind of like this or one hip is out of a little bit, and you would just measure yourself through that. It's kind of similar to what you're saying when you do the measurement analysis, I guess, or movement. What you just say? Yeah. Analysis.
Absolutely. Yeah. The alignment analysis. Yes. It definitely, it puts you on a grid and shows you, are you actually in the line? Or the one that really gets people is when you look from the side, because that really reveals a lot of that weakness in the upper back and that collapsed posture that is so painful, because your spine is naturally an S curve, so it's not actually straight.
Right.
So people say straighten up, and so it's just more like lift up. So your spine is an S curve, but when we sit and we slouch, we go into a C curve. So that's when people start to see that showing up in their body when they're standing up, is very telling for people.
Do a lot of people expect, I was just talking about results. I mean, they're not willing to do the work to get, better, or they want a shortcut, I guess. And they're just like, no, but just get me better day one. I don't want to do all this extra stuff. I don't understand why I can't have a shortcut, because I work with a lot of people who, after 2 weeks, if they don't have a pull up or don't have, I guess whatever their goal was, like, this shit ain't working, I'm done. It's like, no, you got to work at it. It's like everything else. There's no shortcuts in life. As much as you want it to be, I wish there was, but this doesn't work like that no matter what you're doing,
It's true. Yeah. And especially when it comes to our health, or even just in general, like we're so used to instant gratification. Like if your Wi-Fi is slow, you're like tapping it like, oh, maybe I should restart the computer. What's wrong with the phone? We just expect things to be happening like this. And when it comes to your body, it took you a minute to get to that state. It took you a minute for your muscles to get weaker or whatever it is. And so it's going to take time, but it's really, if we start to shift our perspective of recognizing, like, if you have an amazing automobile, you're not going to just like run it into the ground, slam it into the garage and be like, I need to take this to the mechanic, and take it to the mechanic. And he'll be like, yeah, it's going to take a minute. You've done some damage, and it's not that people have done damage to their body, but when it comes to exercise and movement, it's going to take a minute. And it's really just flipping the perspective on, if this is the vehicle that you have, that you've been so beautifully, generously given in order for you to experience life, it kind of is your responsibility to take care of it. And so making that commitment to yourself and making it a priority actually does have a huge return on investment on it when you feel good, when you're be able to be more patient with your partner or your kids or your workmates. You're not snapping at them because you're cranky and in pain. Everything else in your life benefits when you feel good. But we're so quick to just say like, oh, I gotta, I have 1,000,001 things to do, but I can't ever check that super important box because we're so busy checking all the other boxes, but we forget to check the number one box of taking care of ourselves. So
do you think people?
Yeah, sorry, I'll get off my soapbox.
No, you're because I'm sitting there agreeing 100% with you. I guess, do you think people just, to feel healthy, to feel good, to be positive, they just get in these negative comfort zones and they think they're feeling good and they're feeling great, but they're really not. And like, how they just go down these, I always say it on here that these, whatever podcasts or conversations, whatever you want to call it, but that people just get in this negative comfort zone and then they go down this road and they don't ask questions and they're not doing anything to improve themselves. And, 10 years goes down the road and they're looking back like, what happened? Then, then here goes 15 years. And then there's like, oh, wait, I'm not feeling good. Like I got to go to the doctor, get this checked out. And then all of a sudden, hey, you got something seriously wrong. I don't know what a good example is right now, but then they're like, oh, why didn't I? They just, they stay in this negative comfort zone and they don't know what it's like to feel good, I guess. Do you think it's a lot of our, I don't want to say culture or society, but I guess a lot of people in today's times, I guess, in modern society, maybe?
100%. I would say we get a little bit complacent and we get tolerant to what feels fine.
Yeah.
And that's like the common answer. How you doing? I'm fine. I'm okay. Yeah. We kind of just cruise along at cruising altitude of being okay. When if we took a step back and we recognize, well, how do I really want to feel? And that's what I help people do is begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey so beautifully said, of like, what is your ideal for your life in 5 years or 10 years, depending 20, however far you want to go. What does your health look like? How do you walk into a room? What's your routine like? And so getting that information and starting to implement it today. We tend to say, I'll get to it later. I have a lot going on right now. But what if we don't get that opportunity? And so really, how can you begin to embody that version of yourself today so that you can begin to live fully today? And so, we tend to kind of wait till tomorrow. But if we start to really get consistent and get committed to ourselves. And so those are two words that scare a lot of people. But if we can start to just take that little step forward, that journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So what's that step going to be today? How are you going to feel a little bit better today? Because when you start to feel really good and when you start to feel that like strength in your body and you walk in the room, then you'll notice when it doesn't feel good because you're like, oh, why does my back hurt? Oh yeah, because I'm slunched over and I like totally collapsed. Then you'll notice that you're in that position. Whereas if you were in this position all the time, the other position is going to feel weird, right? So when we start to kind of shift it, it just becomes your new way, your new normal, if you will. And so then it becomes how you show up and how you feel is your priority because you love feeling good.
Yeah. And and going off that, you said, mental fitness earlier that, when you're helping people, do you also, when they're actually talking and speaking to people, like the way they actually are talking about themselves, you kind of say, hey, let's shift that into more, because I had a conversation the other day on here and the guy I was talking to said he hired a mindset coach. And I was like, well, I don't really know what that is. Why don't you explain it to me? But, he's trying to build a business, basically so he can get out of his 9-to-5 job. And he was talking with the mindset coach of their first consultation or whatever it was. And he kept saying, well, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. And I'm trying to, do X, Y, and Z. And the mindset coach was like, stop saying I'm trying, and this is where you need to get and change this, I don't know, this loop in your brain to say you're not trying, you're actually doing it. Now start saying that rather than I'm trying, because if you just say you're trying, that just means there's a chance it's going to fail. Does that kind of make sense what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a difference in the languaging. And so either you're trying or you are. So I'm doing this rather than I'm trying, because that kind of, like you said, there's a chance you won't, or it kind of puts it off till later, or I'm only really doing it a little bit. And so, yes, I definitely help people, and it's always a work in progress. And as we all are, I believe, by no means am I like sitting on a high mountain and, perfect. By no means. I will be the first to tell you that. And so, really watching the way we speak to ourselves, because your subconscious mind is always listening.
Sure.
Your conscious mind is the one that's, operating with the rest of the world and, what we see in front of us. But your subconscious mind is where your habits and your identities and your beliefs are stored. And so it's always listening to you. And so what happens is we get into our different patterns and the way we speak and where we cope with things. And so we start to notice of, well, how do you respond in situations that are challenging? Do you go into perfectionism, or do you go into procrastination, or do you go into the whoa, it's me, it never works out? Just start to notice what happens in those moments. And you can almost label them as a character, give them a name, there's, Picky Pete again, that perfectionist version of me. And so giving yourself a little bit of space from it. What I've been trained in the mental fitness is, he calls them saboteurs. So it's the little techniques of self-sabotage that we all tend to have. So we all have, what's commonly known as the inner critic. He calls it the judge, because we're judging ourselves, we're judging the situation, we're judging other people, whether we say anything or not. It's kind of running dialogue in our head. And so what that's doing is it's triggering stress and it's triggering negative emotions. And so that's the main one we all have. But then there's some backup characters like the victim or the perfectionist, the avoider, the controller, the high achiever, which I totally am, and people that are just going after it. And so the opposite to all of that is your wise higher mind, or what's called the sage. And so when you notice that you are in that old pattern of oh, it's never going to work out. Why is this happening to me? Why can't I ever figure it out? Just noticing it, oh, there's that victim version of myself again. What am I going to do instead? So do something that brings you back into your body. So some sort of grounding technique, something as simple as breathing, or one that I find very practical and usable is just super softly rubbing your fingertips together. So softly that you are paying attention to the ridges of your fingertips. And so you can do this while, it doesn't have to be up here. You can just hold it down in your lap or wherever and just really pay attention to it. Because when you do that, you're actually quieting the stress part of your brain called your amygdala, and you're activating the prefrontal cortex, which is the higher function or the thriving aspect of your brain. And when you're in that calm state, you're more grounded, you're more focused, you're more likely to make a positive decision and less likely to respond out of stress or negative emotion. So it's really just kind of paying attention. It goes back to that awareness point of how we are when we get challenged or we get stressed or we get tired or we get upset, how we respond to situations, and just start to notice it and, have it as a little character, and then say, oh, okay, well, what am I going to do? And just breathe or do whatever, or go for a dance or go for a workout, something that takes you out of it and will allow you to access that higher wisdom.
You just talked about breath work, and I just finished reading recently James Nestor's Breathe book. I don't know if you've read that, but when I say recently, it's probably been 6 months or more now. But and also doing these podcasts, and I hear a lot of people talk about more about breathing and breath work, and just how, and it's just it's been overlooked for so many years now. I feel like rather than just during my workouts and stuff. And what I do, but just as far as, the mental health part of it, it's just why is this not getting bigger news, and just reading that book, I was so much little things, just noticing, hey, breathe through your nose more. Don't be a mouth breather. And I'm not, and it's just why, what's going on here? And all the great effects and positive stuff it can do for the body is one thing he says, or James Nestor says in the book, that if you're breathing through your mouth, and I might butcher this one too, that, if you do it for so long, your facial structure will actually start to change and become more narrow, I think. So yeah, and he actually did an experiment where he covered his whole mouth and only breathed through his nose for, I forgot how long he did, but he actually noticed that, I think he actually had some bones grow really where he could fit some pennies in. I don't know, I can't remember. But yeah, I guess my whole point is just that, yeah, this breath work has been overlooked, and I don't understand why, since it's the whole obviously key to life and key to us, keep moving,
100%. Yeah. And I think it's something, you made a good point. I think it's something that's overlooked of, we tend to be looking for these fancy strategies of, first make it done quickly so I don't have to do it forever. But we're looking for these big, ornate, shiny things that are going to be, the biggest transformation possible with the least amount of time and the least amount of investment. And that's actually your breath. And we ignore it, and so yoga essentially is a breathing practice. There's so many different martial arts and other different cultures, even here where I live in Maui, the breath is foundational to all of life. We all understand that we all need oxygen. And so when we come back to the breath or go to the breath in the first place, in as little as 3 deep breaths, there's a drastic shift to your nervous system. And so, like he said, to breathe through your nose, because your nose is a part of you that is attached to the parasympathetic nervous system because of the vagus nerve. So when you are in a calm state, you breathe through your nose. Whereas when we're in that activated fight or flight state, we breathe through our mouth so we can get oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange more quickly. When you're in that calm state, you breathe through your nose. So that's one powerful thing you can do. And your breath and your lungs are the only way that you can have a direct impact on your nervous system, other than relaxing the muscles of your jaw and your face. But from an organ perspective, it's your lungs. So when you shift to your breath and you go to your breath and you even just as simple as paying attention to the breath, there's already a shift. So I agree with you. It's a tool set that's often overlooked, but it's so powerful and so impactful. And when we learn to breathe well, it has major shifts to your body, the way you carry yourself, your oxygen levels. Part of the problem with the way we sit and slouch is your lung capacity goes down by about 30% when you're slouched over because your diaphragm gets squashed. So you take short and shallow breaths, which first it triggers stress, because remember, that's how we breathe when we're stressed, but it decreases oxygen levels to your brain by 30%. Your brain's never going to let it go lower than that because it's all about survival. But when you have that decreased level of oxygen, everything starts to get a little bit sleepy, you get tired, you get distracted, and everything changes. So it's really a powerful tool set for people to have.
Do you specialize when you're doing yoga? Do you do a certain type of yoga, or is it just? I don't know a lot about yoga. I actually just learned about Kundalini yoga a few weeks ago. So do you do like a certain type like that, or is it just kind of a general yoga or hot yoga? So, or what?
That's always a question I have a challenging time to answer because
Good.
I studied with a variety of different teachers, and then I have my own approach, I suppose, that sort of intermingled the personal training aspect as well as the breath and the intentional embodiment, because I'm all about that embodied intention of like, you make a decision of how you want to feel for the day based on that big vision that you have for yourself. So if you want to feel courageous today in your practice, that's what you focus on. So you're saying that to yourself with the clear intention. So this is from Dr. Joe Dispenza. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work, but he talks about changing our chemistry by way of a clear intention. So the statement of, I am courageous, or whatever it is you want, and the embodiment of the elevated emotional state, activating that state within yourself. So you combine those two things, the elevated emotion and the clear intention, with repetition, actually changes the hardwiring of your brain, changes the belief structure that you have about yourself. So we use the yoga practice to practice being courageous. And so being courageous means to lift and lead with your heart. So from the postural point of view, that's the exact opposite to the scrunched over collapsed position, right? So how can you be courageous is hold yourself in a courageous posture and activate that through your practice. And so to answer your question in a roundabout sort of way, it's a practice that really helps people to connect back to themselves. And that's the essence of yoga, but it's not like a specific style per se. I like to pull from all the different modalities and kind of, blend it together. It's Megan yoga.
I like that just because, because I tend to think like that, when I see things I like, it's like, well, I like that part of it, but I don't like this part of it, and so like, why can't we just all, that's what Bruce Lee did with martial arts, and that he took all the different things and just combined them together and made one his style. And then obviously he's one of the most badass fighters there is. So yeah, I mean, and it's something I think new and innovative stuff like that is what people might be drawn to. I mean, that's kind of what I was, when I started CrossFit, that's what I was drawn to. It was taking, Olympic lifting, running, gymnastics and move it into one workout. And I was like, well, this is badass. I've never done this before. Let's keep doing this. I mean, is that what your thinking was, that, I like this part. I like this part. Let's make it, Megan yoga. That's like you said, or Megan fitness.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like the combination of it. And because in the exercise, pardon 1 second, I'm just going to cough.
No worries.
In the exercise realm, there is strengthening of the bones and the muscles. And then in the yoga realm, there's postural awareness, the breath awareness. And so what I like to do is bring them both together.
Yeah. Just, I just feel like everybody's always looking for a new, I don't want to say trend, but what's the next best diet? What's the next best thing to get me in shape? What's the next best thing? And then when I hear something like, oh, well, Joe over there's been doing this. I mean, why don't you go try that? Then it gets people excited about something because it's new, and it's not like, yeah, well, I tried, bodybuilding. It wasn't for me. I tried powerlifting. It wasn't for me, but you get them something new and they're like, oh, I'll try it. Let's stay on it. And like, it excites them, and plus if you really get them involved with it, they stay, most people tend to stick with them, generally speaking, but that's, I guess, my experience with it. New things seem to always spark people's interest more until after a while they find the next new thing, so. For
sure. Yeah. We're always looking for the next, newest, best, shiniest thing.
But,
is this the thing that's going to help me?
I'm an enemy of nutrition and stuff. And just because, everyone's just like, and we don't have to go down a diet or nutrition rant here, but just be like, well, what do you do? What do you eat? And it's like, well, this is what I do. And then I go, well, write me up a program and I'll do that. And it's like, well, that's fine. But hey, just so you understand though, just because that's what I do and that's what's working for me doesn't mean that that's all. It could work for you if you stick to it, but I'm not saying it's going to be 100% guaranteed, and that's what I think a lot of people get misrepresentations when they look up to the, I guess, fitness models and certain people, and they fail and they kind of blame it like, well, it didn't work out for me. And then maybe they tend with burnout or on it when they do get it and they do get some results and then they go out like a yo-yo effect. So yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure where I was going with that point. I guess that was just a little rant, but I don't know.
All good.
Okay, good. But let's, I guess let's shift gears here. And just that I know that, well, speaking of burnout, you have experienced burnout, right? And that, in your past, and that I guess you got over it, or what did you do to deal with it?
Yeah, it's horrible. It sucks.
Yeah.
It's really one of those things that I'm passionate about helping people to avoid, because it's a long and rambly, rocky road back, because not only are you completely taxed emotionally, mentally, physically, but it takes a lot to rebuild your inner fire, if you will, your zest for life, your drive to keep going. And so it really is one of those things of, it gives you an appreciation for how amazing your body does feel when it feels good. And when it doesn't feel good, it's kind of like when we've had a cold or what have you, it's like, oh man, it's nice to feel good again. And feel like I can climb upstairs. And so it really, that like ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure sort of deal. So what can we do to prevent it? And it's all the things that we've been speaking to throughout this, but yeah, it was rough. I mean, it was challenging because I literally felt so tapped out that like my yoga, my workout was literally just laying on the ground and crying and wondering like, what the heck am I supposed to do? I don't know if I'm cut out to be an entrepreneur. I don't know if I'm even on the right path. I don't know where the path is anymore. Does anybody know where the path is? You're like going through the whole gamut of all the questions. And so it's kind of one of those moments of testing yourself, your resilience, your determination, your ability to get back up. And it's like, we're not measured by how many times, or I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's the how many times we fall and get back up again. Right. And so it's like, it's going to happen inevitably that we have these challenging moments in our life, but getting burnt out is not inevitable as long as we are strategic on a regular basis, on a daily basis, and it's the whole like filling up the cup and putting on the mask and making sure we don't get to that point. If you're hearing funny noises, it's my dog is dreaming underneath the table. I imagine he's chasing bunny rabbits somewhere, but yeah, he's doing this thing.
Like to be challenged? Do you find yourself wanting to be challenged throughout, daily life and find new obstacles to try to conquer?
That's a great question.
I mean,
sorry?
I was just going to say, just because I've gotten to where I feel like, or I do like that. I like little small challenges and they give me these wins and then overcoming or breaking down the walls. And I feel like it not only helps my mind, but it's like, I don't know if it's a key to longevity, but I feel like if you just like, I guess we've been talking about it the whole time here, but you get stuck in that routine or whatever, and you just go through life and whatever. But if you keep challenging yourself and finding out what you're made of, it seems to, not only make you a badass, but it makes regular life easier, I guess. If the waiter gets your order wrong or whatever, like, all right, cool, whatever, no big deal. I mean, I think that's why some people tend to do hard things, because it makes regular daily life easier. I hope that kind of makes sense. So yeah.
It does. I agree with you. It keeps things interesting, and it teaches you how to navigate those moments, and rather than having to overcome it, is recognizing that those little hiccups and those little ups and downs are part of it, and they're really teaching you a lot and teaching you how to handle things more gracefully. And sometimes when you don't handle them gracefully, you get to look back and reflect and decide how you're going to do it next time. Because you're right. It's like, if the server gets your order wrong, some people lose they lose it. And then it's like, oh, that's not really necessary. Like, are you so tapped out and impatient that that's like making you blow your top? Or like, can you just have these moments of, oh, things happen. What are we going to do? Am I just going to wait? Maybe I'll just have another drink or have some more water or whatever. In the meantime, it's no big deal. It's really about how we handle those challenges, I think. So maybe that's a good point, is that, if we bring these little moments of learning and growing and evolving into our life consistently, then it gives us that opportunity to strengthen that muscle, that resiliency, and that ability to navigate more gracefully.
Yeah. I mean, just because, I've been around people who I feel like don't do that. Just like to your point that, they lose their shit, like, for a better word, that when something bad happens, it's like, hey, it's not really that big of a deal. I mean, we can calm down. So it's just like, what life path did you take that, or life experience did you take that it was cool to do that, or why was it not even cool to do that, but just why are you doing that? I don't understand the big deal. Like, did you have a bad day today? What else is going on in your life? And it's like all these things build up, and then all of a sudden it's like, boiling water, the top explodes or whatever. And just, it didn't have to be like that. So it was, why don't you take a little, maybe like journaling or something seems to be a great tool that I don't use, but I kind of just keep saying I want to use it. But it seems like, hey, to get the stress out a little bit, write down your thoughts, write down what's bothering you, and learn to say, hey, if I want to fix this, how can I fix this? If you're unhappy with your weight, if you're unhappy with your posture, I mean, okay, well, there's tons of information out there. It's all over the place, Go make a change, I mean, it's that easy for me. I say it's easy, but I guess a lot of people have other different obstacles, but it seems easy to me.
Well, yeah. And there's no shortage of information. I mean, we have like an information overload, right? You could Google anything on YouTube and become an expert within an hour. It's really the implementation that the issue lies. That's where the issue lies. Is like, we can do all the research in the world, but if you're not going to put the tools to use, then the tool's no good if it's in the box on the shelf. So it's really that commitment. I agree. It's all about that personal choice, and what we're going to make a priority in our life.
Do you find yourself, I mean, with information and over information, always having to keep up with, and I'm not experienced in yoga, and how I've been to a couple of yoga classes. I like it, but you're always trying to stay, even with, I'm sure there's always new science with, posture and body mechanics and stuff. I mean, you always find yourself, hey, I need to stay on top of this. And how do I stay on top of this? And, always looking for like, new studies that are coming out. I mean, or you just kind of, like you said, you found your thing, you found your groove, and you know what works, and kind of stay in that lane. Does that kind of make sense?
Both. I like to learn. I love to learn. I think that's really important. It's actually really important for your brain to continue to learn new things and challenge yourself. But I think that's important to stay current and to continue to challenge ourselves, to your point earlier, but also to learn and to grow and evolve. So that's definitely something that's, I think I at least could always get a little stronger at. So definitely something important. I know I've subscribed to the Google alerts, and it sends me all the things, but it sends me like 5 a day, and then I forget to look at it. So I feel like I should, it's a good reminder. Thank you. I should get back on that a little more consistently to take my own medicine.
Well, no, I do it too. I mean, for a while, I'm listening to something and doing my own thing and not really keeping up with what's new out there. And so then I'm like, everything's just constantly changing so much. And it's just always, new diets, new whatever this. And if I get asked about it, I'm just like, well, I don't really know. I haven't heard about it, So then they're like, well, you probably should. And I said, well, I guess I'll go learn about it now. But, I guess, and I'm not saying like what I do, I need to be an expert in anything, and as far as nutrition and all that good stuff. But I don't know. Like, I guess because I like to learn new things and kind of at least get the gist of what's going on out there, just because as I said, there's so much changing. There's always somebody who's got some new study out that, oh, you should eat, what's my point here? That actually Snickers bar is actually somewhat can be beneficial to you after a really tough, grueling workout, and like somebody wouldn't believe that, but there was a couple studies done and there's a couple athletes who do it. And it was like, cause get the sugar back in your glycogen or whatever it is. But anyway, but it's just stuff like that. When people ask that question, I'm like, yeah, there's actually it's not a foolproof 100% way to do things, but there is some good science to it, I guess. So I guess that's the reason I asked that question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But and going back, I mean, talking about journaling and all that, I mean, do you meditate? Do you journal? Do you do anything to kind of say, like, give yourself a break and like, hey, 15 minutes, I'm just going to reset my batteries, get back to neutral and go about my way?
Yes, absolutely. So I do my journaling in the morning time. I do it as gratitude journaling, and then kind of rolling into the visualization I start with the things that are actually in my life that I'm very grateful for. And then I continue to write it as things that I'm wanting to create in my life, wanting to bring into my life. And I just continue to write it as though they have already occurred in my life. So I'm shifting my perspective around them. And for a long time, admittedly, especially when I was burnt out, when I was not meditating or wasn't able to do yoga, I totally felt like an imposter and a fraud because I was a yoga teacher that didn't meditate. And meditation is the ultimate goal of yoga. We do all the poses in yoga to be able to meditate. And so I wasn't doing it because my mind is just very active. You try to get it quiet and it's like a circus in there. And so I avoided it for a long time until my grandmother was diagnosed with dementia.
Oh.
And sadly, yeah. And I got really freaked out. And so I'm thinking like, okay, well, what can I do? What can I do to keep my brain healthy? And I started to research because I love to learn. And one of the most powerful combinations to keep your brain healthy is actually a combination of cardio. So anything where your heart rate is elevated, because that actually encourages new neurons or brain cells to grow. So when you do cardio, you grow new brain cells. And then meditation. So the combination of cardio and meditation, because the meditation is challenging for your brain cells because they have to do something. So it causes them to mature and stick around. So I'm like, oh, I'm motivated now. I'm going to learn how to do this. And I still couldn't. And so I went to my teacher and I said, I really would like to learn how to meditate. I really just can't get this noisy chatter of the shitty committee in my head to shush it. It just keeps going all the time. And she said, well, maybe you haven't found your stick. And I'm like, what does that even mean? And she said, well, elephants. I'm like, where is this story going? She says, when you think of an elephant, don't you often picture them and they have a stick? They're carrying a stick in their trunk, or they're holding on with their trunk to the tail of the elephant in front of them. Okay. And I'm like, yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, that makes sense to me. And she said, why do you think that is? And I'm like, I'm not sure. And she said, well, elephants are very smart. And I said, yes, they're very smart, beautiful beings, super hyper intelligent, very emotionally connected, lovely beings, but they're really smart and they're super curious. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So when they're out and about on their walk, their handlers have to give them something to do because they're always looking around with their trunk. They're trying to pick things up. They're trying to do this and that. And I was like, am I the elephant? And she said, close. Your mind is like the elephant. You're the handler, that you give it something to do and you give it a stick. And I was like, that totally makes sense now. So that's why we have all of these different tools to meditate. And one of the first and foremost is people go to is their breath. But if you are of a very busy mind, like many of the people that I work with that are very driven, hyperachievers, going after it sort of people, their mind, you just like tell them to breathe and they're like, okay, I'm doing it, but it's not possible. So doing something like doing this, as we spoke to earlier, or closing your eyes and just listening to all the sounds that you can hear. So you're actually doing something. You're achieving that same state of calm and meditation that we spoke to earlier when you're quieting the noisy chatter of the mind and you're activating the higher center of the mind, which is the goal of yoga, is to quiet the noise, but also knowing that there's never going to be complete and utter stillness. It's you just recognizing, oh, I'm over there chattering again. Okay. I'm breathing, I'm focusing on the fingertips, you're doing whatever it is you're doing, and that becomes your stick. And so that tool set of the mental fitness is the most practical one that I've found for myself and for my clients and students, because it's simple stuff. It's not like sitting and, that kind of customary stereotypical image of meditation. You got your incense, and you got your cushion, you got the music, you got this and that, which is beautiful. And if that's your jam, then go for it. But if you can do something that helps you to achieve that state while you're on the bus, while you're walking to school, whatever it is, while you're driving, you're listening, you're acutely paying attention, you're achieving that same state of meditation. And I mean, of course, there is room and space in your life if you love to just sit quietly and do those and use the tools to be able to, have that more classical meditation. That's beautiful as well. But sometimes that's not as practical. So to answer your question, yes, that's how I meditate.
I want to circle back to something you said earlier. Well, just now, but and we don't have to talk about this if you don't want to. But you said imposter? Do you deal with imposter syndrome, or have you dealt with it? Because I do a little bit.
We all do, to a degree.
Really?
It means that you're challenging yourself. You're pushing to the edge of your comfort zone, and it means that you are allowing yourself to experience a new part of your life where you don't feel as comfortable yet, and you maybe don't feel as skilled. And it's really just your own brain's way of keeping you in that zone of familiarity of like, no, don't go over there. You're not going to be good at it. Remember that time when you messed up and everyone laughed at you when you were 5 years old? And it's all of that stuff that comes back at you. So that's one of the characters that you would just label and be like, oh, thanks for the information. What does my higher mind say? My higher mind says that I know my stuff. I'm learning my stuff, and I'm going to practice it right now, and I'll get a little more confident. I'll get a little more skilled at it every time I do it. But maybe I'm not going to feel like $1 million boss doing it right away. And that's okay. Everyone started as a beginner, and it's just about how we speak to ourselves around that. And that's really the essence of mindset, right? It's just changing the way we look at something, changing the way we speak to ourselves, and just recognizing that we all have those moments, we all have those doubts, and that's actually really quite normal, and it's healthy, but it's how you handle it that's really on you. And that's where the tools come in handy.
Yeah. I firmly agree with exactly what you just said, that, if you stay in your comfort zone, you're never going to grow, and you need to get out of there. And if you want to grow and do something, kind of what we were talking about earlier, you got to get out of that comfort zone, even if it's just a small step. If you want to get to a goal or whatever you're trying to do in life, can't always be in the comfort zone all the time, no matter how much you want to be. Trust me, I've been there. And it's just, when I took my first step, it was kind of like, okay, a small win. Okay, I can do this, You don't have to take a leap of faith. Let's write out, and go big on something, but just get those little wins, get the confidence up. But yeah, I still do, it's like you said, I still do deal with it a little bit. Just my mind goes in those places like, nope, don't do it, Chris. What are you doing? You're going to look like a fool. You're going to look like an idiot. It's like, okay, I've dealt with this before, and it's just let me shake it out of my head and get going. That's kind of what my key is. You just got to find your way, like you just said, to get over it, get around it. So, But I know I want to be respectful of your time. I want to be mindful of that. So if you want to go ahead and just plug in all of your, if people want to find you and all that good stuff, how do they do that?
Sure. Yeah. So come over and hang out with me on Instagram. So on Instagram, my handle is I am Megan Nolan. So IAMMEGANNOLAN. And then I do have a mini morning routine that I'd love to share with your listeners. So that's my 3-step mini morning routine that helps you to, as we spoke to, connect to your big vision, be able to embody that version of yourself today. And also, how can you express that version so that you're taking those steps forward, quieting that noisy chatter and moving towards your big vision. So the link to grab that for free is bit.ly/mini morning routine. So it's a great way to get your day started. And literally, a couple minutes is amazing. If you have more, that's awesome, but not necessary. Just do what you can, because when you feel good, everything else gets a little easier.
I agree. Last question. How long have you been in Hawaii? All your life or recent?
No, I'm originally from Canada, but I don't like snow. So I've lived here for a total of 12 years. I lived on the Big Island for 2, and I've been on Maui for almost 11, so 10.
That's cool. Yeah. I was just like, I wonder if she's always been from Hawaii. But yeah, cool. All right. Anything else you want to put out there? All that good stuff? Anything else you want to say?
Thanks so much for having me.
Cool.
It's been great to chat.
Good. Yeah, folks, take care of yourself. Be good to yourself. All that good stuff. We're out of here. Later.